Hello, folks online. Glad to be back. So, Matthew mentioned in the earlier session about Acuity, our AcuityCares program. And it's something we've been doing for quite a few years. And in our first year of doing AcuityCon, we kind of on a whim just decided to ask, again, we're like, we can't just have me and Matthew up here. It just gets way too boring and old. We got to bring some folks who are interesting, inspiring. And so in our very first year, we brought Brett Hagler, who is one of our AcuityCares clients. And Brett spoke to us just about what they were doing. And that is, at New Story, they are out truly trying to end global homelessness. And you may hear that and think, well, that's kind of a crazy thing, until you actually get to hear and talk about what they're doing. These are the types of clients and businesses and organizations we at Acuity just are inspired to be around. We are grateful we get a chance to work with them. And that's what AcuityCares is all about. So even tomorrow, our coffee tomorrow is going to be provided by Refuge Coffee, another one of our AcuityCares clients who are out basically helping focus on providing welcome to refugees. I mean, there's never been it's in the news huge right now. It's happening in Afghanistan. They are on the front lines. They're welcoming people to our country and helping give some job training and benefits. So these are the kind of folks, and it's why we love doing AcuityCares. And Matthew mentioned, as we grow and scale, we get opportunity to work with more of them. I mean, these are just a joy and privilege to work with. And so that pattern of having AcuityCares clients come speak to us, I'm so happy, continues today. And we're going to talk with Joey Womack. And Joey's going to come up and talk a little bit about how he started Goodie Nation. And I'll tell you, if you don't, everybody knows Joey. Everybody knows Joey. And you're about to. If you don't, you're about to. When you say, you're going to tell people, hey, I heard this guy Joey Womack talk about Goodie Nation. I promise you, other people are going to be, oh, I've heard Joey. I know Joey. Joey is doing huge things, not just in Atlanta. It's getting out throughout the Southeast, throughout the country. And it's one of the great reasons why we love working with him. And I think that it's not because people don't all just know Joey. It's not just because he works with, or he's an advisor to people like Google, to Ford, to Coca-Cola, to Techstars, to Venture Atlanta, to South by Southwest. That's not the reason why everybody knows Joey. Real reason why everybody knows Joey is he's also an amazing DJ. And he's got this Spotify playlist. I'm very jealous. I really want to get my hands on it at some point. I'm going to see if I can still try to get my hands on that. But no, in all seriousness, he is an amazing DJ. I'm sure of it. Is the reason why everybody knows Joey is, I believe, he has got one of the boldest, I think, personal missions I've ever seen out there. And that is that he wants to positively influence 1 billion people by 2039. And when you hear that, it just strikes you. It just you think, what? He's got a date on that. He's got a huge numbers he's hitting. And I think Lisa and I were talking about it because we had watched Joey on a video, and I remember when I mentioned that, you said to me, he's not kidding. He's gonna do it. So I only question whether or not maybe his timeline's a little too far out there, because he's having a huge outsized impact in so many communities. And we're so grateful. He's one of our AcuityCares clients. He's doing great things. I can't wait for y'all to hear from him. He's going to talk for 25, 30 minutes or so, and then answer any questions. And I think you'll have a lot, because Joey has some amazing things to say. So give it up for Joey Womack.
Appreciate you. It's true. It's true. Actually, I have probably the world's best playlist on Spotify. It's called If I Were a DJ. And maybe I'll get to that story today. Then I'll also tell you the story about how I came up with the 1 billion person mark. And so super excited for this. Also because I started out as a accounting major in college. I'll tell you that story as well. And so, yes, again, I am Joey Womack, founder of of Goodie Nation. Sorry, I'm trying to break out my phone, not to text, mainly just to keep myself on time here and putting this stuff on a timer. And so I also do a few things like Amplify for Good and Atlanta Black Tech and serve on a few boards. But I'm really big on origin stories. So I grew up, I'm going to date myself, born in 1979, grew up on Star Wars and stuff like that. So I'm a really big fan of origin stories. And I'll tell you a little bit about mine, because I think it'll help to tie in this whole thing around accounting, tech, and social impacts. And so when I talk to people around finding their purpose and, coming up with a goal around it, I say it typically focuses on you can do three different things. First, look at what upsets you most in the world right now. And sometimes it's just things that are very obvious, but sometimes it's things that are a little bit deeper. And so for me, one thing that really upsets me is unrealized potential and then also wasting time. I'm really, really big on efficiency. The second, if you can do it, is remember what you were like when you were a kid. So like 4th, 5th grade, before you go to middle school and like the pressures of the world start to get to you, you try to influence everybody else and you're worried about what people think about you. Think about what you were like when you closed the door in your room, and you could just be who you are. Like that's who you are as a person. Some people, sang, some people drew, some people just tinkered around. People do a lot of different things. They played outdoors. If you could intersect what you were like as a kid, and then if you can intersect what makes you upset, I think you're really in a good pathway to learning your purpose. And the final thing, if you can, look back to what your parents and what your family members, maybe sisters, brothers, aunts and uncles, grandparents did, right? And if you look at their skill sets and maybe some of the jobs they have, kind of by definition, again, if you can do this, it's within you as well. So if you do that Venn diagram, if you intersect all those three areas, that'll lead you to your purpose. And so for me, my mother is like a human Facebook, legitimately like not lying. She knows everybody. She also actually, this is funny because we were talking like last weekend, the first job she ever wanted was to be a geneticist. This is actually interesting because, you're talking about black women, Montgomery, Alabama, early 70s or late 60s, early 70s. Like, how did you even figure this out? But ironically, that was the first thing I ever wanted to be as well. 7th grade, wanted to become a genetic engineer, more so because I had this weird love for like dinosaurs and like alligators and sharks. It really wanted to kind of mash up all these three to create this weird animal. My father is, he's from Mobile as well, and I can tell you some of their backstories, but I know we're on time here. My father grew up, ironically, he's from the area of Mobile, Alabama called Africatown, where the last slaves eventually that came to this country eventually settled, and so on and so forth. And so actually really interesting history around baseball, produced like 5 black baseball Hall of Famers. And he actually wanted to go to college to major in essentially would be computer science. Ended up getting a scholarship to a small black college in Virginia. He ended up majoring in business and went on to become an accountant. So as I'm growing up, he's an accountant I think at first it was with DuPont Rochelle and then DuPont and so on and so forth. And so his love for numbers, my mom's ability to connect interesting people really influenced me. And so I knew that I always had this love for numbers and trends. Like if I would grow up today, I would be a data scientist, really. But because of the influence of my father and also my cousin who went on to work for Arthur Andersen and become a CPA, I decided to major in accounting in college, which is at Florida University, which is interesting because the summer before my senior year of high school, so summer 1996, my junior year, I get into this program at Tuskegee University for 30 of the top black students that wanted to major in engineering in college. And so they would pay us like $1,000. We get to hang out on college campus, go to classes, get mentored, and so on and so forth. Now, if you remember back to like the mid-1990s, internet was there. People had computers, but at least where I grew up in Alabama, and in a pretty good neighborhood, not everyone had internet access and computers weren't as prolific. And so they paired us up with an engineering professor to work on a summer project. Typical stuff, right? And so the guy sits me down and says, you know what? what kind of engineering do you want to major in college? And, I'm there really to get paid and to have fun. I mean, that's just really my whole thing. I mean, that was the reason for me attending. And this is one of those moments in life I think we can all reflect back on where you hear a voice to say either go left or go right, to do well or to not, to tell the truth or to not. And so I was really, really scared. So think of this 17-year-old kid on college campus, got into this prestigious program, getting paid. And I feel like if I tell him the truth that I don't want to major in engineering, I'm just here to have fun, that they're going to kick me out. And so I'm about to tell him some type of engineering. And so I'm going through my 17-year-old head, what engineering is the easiest? Is it chemical? Is it aerospace? What Tuskegee's known for? And I come up with mechanical. And I'm going to tell him I'm going to major in mechanical engineering. But something said, tell him the truth, Joey. And I did. And he's like, okay, cool. I'm going to teach you how to build websites. And that is my entryway into tech. I spent my entire summer learning HTML and launching websites. And so then I eventually go on to Florida A&M University, much to the dismay of my mother, who actually went to Tuskegee and the people at the school, and majored in business, focused on accounting. My first internship, 1999, sophomore year, the spring of my sophomore year, I was working for Mutual of New York, in New York at the headquarters and so on and so forth, tax season and so on and so forth. 19-year-old kid, never been on a plane before, never been really outside of Alabama and Florida to a certain extent, in the big city. And I end up getting connected. I promise you, I'm going to stick this landing. I end up getting connected to these college students at Columbia and also at NYU. And so this is mid-February. They have a Black History Month program at NYU. And I'm having fun with my friends, so on and so forth. They invited me down to the program. And so again, leaving work, one of those scenarios, do I go to an event or do I go home? It's been a long day, so on and so forth. Something said in my head, go to the event. I get there, and there's 4 people in the audience. I promise. I was like, this is the worst decision I've ever made. I could be relaxing, so on and so forth. And they had a few panelists, 3 of them. So it's 3 panelists, 4 people in the audience, including me. And one of those panelists is D-Nice, the rapper D-Nice, if you heard about him, especially during quarantine and so on and so forth. Now, I knew about D-Nice, one of my favorite rappers and stuff like that. I'm like, oh man, this is New York, meeting a rapper. And he starts talking about how he transitioned from being a rapper at the time to being a photographer and designing websites. And so as I listen to him speak, something clicks in my mind about how I'm witnessing my friends at Columbia and NYU have fun, but my friends back at Florida A&M and Tallahassee have fun. And I immediately catch a train back uptown to Harlem, where they put me up, and started working on my first website to connect Black college students at HBCUs and those at non-HBCUs. And so that's how I really started to go from idea to pilot. Quick story about how I launched my first tech startup, and then I'll get into Goodie Nation in a second. I went on to do another internship with Seagram's & Son. Actually, the summer they got bought out by Vivendi. Interesting scenario. The next internship was with Ford they spun out Visteon, so I was working with the general auditor. And so during that internship in Detroit, there was a dude that sent out emails via Yahoo group about all the events going on in downtown Detroit, free concerts, blah, 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 blah. And so at that time, I had pledged a fraternity. I was part of the committee. That put on the events to raise money. I threw parties, is what it boiled down to. And so I witnessed this Yahoo group with 20,000, 30,000 people across Detroit get a lot of activity. I said, aha, we can do this back at school and promote it to all of our students and get a lot more people to attend our events. The fraternity makes more money. Makes a lot of sense. And this is 2001, summer 01. So I go back to campus, very excited. We have our first fraternity meeting. I say, guys, listen, that's an awesome idea. Email is the future. We're going to send out emails about parties. We're going to give a few people discounts. and they were going to get the rest of the people to pay. They're like, that is a horrible idea. The email is not the future and stuff like that. So because I'm an innovator, I like to genetically engineer stuff and mix and match and so on and so forth, and I'm a rebel with a cause, I decided to run a private pilot myself. I basically ran a beta. And so I went around the campus, got like 30 people signed up, put them in a Yahoo group, offered like the first 5 people to respond to the email, free admission into the party. And I'm like, I'm going to have to sneak them in because this wasn't allowed. And so of the 30 people that were on the list, 5 people responded. I snuck them in for free. 15 other people came out and paid money, right? So I'm thinking this is a very successful pilot. I go back the next day to the fraternity meeting and say, hey guys, I did this. Here are the results, blah, blah, blah. They're like, yeah, this actually worked out. Horrible idea, we're not gonna do it. I'm like, oh, okay, you all cannot see the future, you suck, I hate you, whatever. And so here's the thing. I'll leave this and I'll go into Goodie Nation. Fast forward 6 months. This is March of 2002. Leaving my last class of the day. I can't remember what it was, but this was the week after spring break. Probably can't remember the exact class. And got into my car, bright spring day, had a Honda Accord, CD player. The CD player was off. I back out of the parking space in the School of Business parking lot, and I hear a voice in my left ear. The voice said, do it, like a loud whisper. Now I'm thinking, the first thought was actually like one of my friends playing a practical joke on me, like something like you see out of like the movies and stuff like that. And so I literally stopped the car, get out to see if someone's in the back seat. The radio, the CD player is off and stuff like that. But then the second thought was I immediately knew what that idea was or what it was. And it was to launch this website that I had presented to the fraternity 6 months earlier. And I went home and wrote the first business plan for what turned into the first startup that I did, the actual company that I launched. Went on to build like top 5 in the country. If you could take nothing else from some of the things I just said, is to listen to that voice, because it will not let you down. So fast forward after building the company, moving here to Atlanta, stuff like that, I began to build community for entrepreneurs and people in social impact. And so we talked earlier about Ripples of Hope. So how Goodie Nation actually started, and I'll kind of go into what we do in a second. Sanjay Parker calls me, says, you know what? I'm doing this Atlanta Startup Week. Can you do some diverse events around it? I'm like, okay, cool. I come up with a few different concepts. One of them is a hackathon for good. We would take other nonprofits and then bring together developers, designers, marketing people. Sorry, accountants that really fit into the mix. I apologize. Bring them together to solve technical challenges for nonprofits with the thought that, and this really goes into belief around Goodie Nation, is that we have everything that we need to create the change that we seek. We're just not efficient in how we utilize these assets. Kind of going back to the things that really upset me in the world. And so for 2 years, we did some amazing hackathons, tons of hype. We took over Google's office in Midtown. Like, we called it like Club Google. We had like 200 people in that office for a hackathon. It was like a fire code, and it was people really scared about going to jail. But here's the thing, lots of hype. The reality is, unfortunately, not a lot of impact. So September 2016, we got a grant from Google, $10,000, honestly, to launch a social impact pre-accelerator. So this is helping people go from idea to pilot. And how that really started for me was those hackathons to help nonprofits. We started to see that though people would start the work during the weekend, they wouldn't finish it. And we needed people that would continue the work indefinitely to see the impact that we wanted to see. And the only people I could think about was entrepreneurs. And my thought was if I find some entrepreneurs, help them come up with an idea, have them fall in love with the idea, and then bring together designers, developers, marketers, product managers, still no accountants, but bring them together, we could help them do some great products around social impact. So that first cohort, fall 2016, was focused on what we call gentrification economic inclusion. And the first event was literally here in this room. It ended up having Gooder in it, Jasmine Crowe from Gooder, Jen Graham from Civic Dinners, and India Hayes from Mini City. Jasmine Crowe sat right there where you're sitting, man, with the blue bag, by herself, and worked on an idea for Gooder. We literally have the pictures. Jen Graham sat here on the second row and worked through that idea. And India Hayes from Mini City focused on homelessness, sat on the third row, man, with the turquoise on, right there, and worked on the idea. And so we knew, like with the success of those companies, and at least the initial success, we were like, we got something. Like, this process works. But then, like, the next 2 years, like, we didn't produce anything. So I went back to the drawing board. Summer 2019, and here's where Goodie Nation is right now. We decided to focus on companies that were a little bit further along. So no more idea stage. Work with people that already had a product, and then we would pepper them with interesting and talented people that could give them advice, that could give them capital, that could buy their products, it could help them with professional growth. And so where Goodie Nation sits today is this program called Intentionally Good, where we're focused on closing what we call the relationship gap for social entrepreneurs and diverse founders. Most of the conversation right now about helping those type of entrepreneurs focuses on money. And yes, that is an issue. But going back to, like, my mom being a human Facebook and connecting people, what I began to see is that people are the big thing. I mean, you hear it all the time, like phrases that have been passed down throughout life. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And one of my mentors, Kwame Anku, will tell me, it's just not who you know, it's who knows you and how plugged in they are. So our focus at Goodie Nation is taking awesome people that are entrepreneurs and then connecting them with awesome people, the rest of the people in the world. And we think that awesome things will happen. And so in the first 12 months of this program, we had connected these type of founders to $5 million in investment and cash awards. And what we can say now that we're 24 months in, it's up to $22 million in investment and cash awards. We have 300 founders. We literally just crossed the 300 founder threshold. And now we have a founder in Sierra Leone working on maternal health there. We have a founder in Chile that just got into Techstars, and then one in Berlin. And yesterday, we announced the second round with Google for Startups of the Black Founders Fund, taking 50 of the most talented entrepreneurs across the country and then giving them $100,000 in cash awards each, along with about $400,000 in support of Google Cloud credits, Google Ad credits, coaching, mentoring, so on and so forth. And so that started with that hackathon, this belief that we have everything that we need to create the change that we seek. And quite honestly, an inflection point was literally in this room right here. So that's some of the things we're working on with now at Goodie Nation. I can tell you a little bit about kind of what we're seeing as well in working with all these awesome entrepreneurs. But I want to quickly share a quick story about the Black Founders Fund with Google for Startups. So last summer, really after George Floyd, they put this plan in motion. And they were like, well, we're not going to give this $5 million, directly to the founders. We need a nonprofit to partner with to do it. And so because Julberg Solomon used to be on our board and is a very good friend, actually, I was the one that really first introduced her to the tech scene when she moved here from California. She was like, let's go with Goodie Nation. So she gives me the call, and she's like, Joey, you want to partner with you in the $5 million Black Founders Fund? Boom, boom, boom. I'm like, awesome. And I'm like, how am I literally going to give these folks this money? Like, our budget wasn't that big, I think, at the time, like last year. Again, it's middle pandemic, too. Our budget may have been like $200,000, something like that. Like, how am I going to give these folks this money? How am I going to keep their information secure? And stuff like that. So I'm like feverishly like searching ways to do it. I know Facebook had done something similar. So I'm trying to like reverse engineer their process and how they did it. I'm making a few phone calls to like like Adobe and so on and so forth. And ultimately, I landed on Bill.com. And so I figured it was the most efficient way that we could get folks their money and keep their information secure. And so we set up a Bill.com account, and last year was 76 companies that received the money. This year it was 50. And I can tell you it was probably the most seamless process that I've ever done, considering that we had to get a lot of information from people. It had to be like in a very, very short amount of time, and we turned that money around with no problem. So I'm a really big fan, again, of tools that can make things efficient. And I can literally tell you, is there anybody from Bill.com here right now, by the way? You. Y'all, okay, I didn't know. So it's up here. I'm like looking around. I didn't know. I apologize. Y'all literally saved my life. Like from a stress standpoint, like saved my life and also made lives a lot easier for those founders. So we've put $10 million through, in the last, roughly 12 months, quite honestly. So, thank you all for that. What I can say is I got about a few minutes left is what we're seeing now with working with these entrepreneurs. Again, I mentioned like 300 of them around the country, a little bit across the world as well. Where we sit, about 30% of these founders are at the stage where they have a product, but they're maybe like $100,000 a year or less in revenue. Roughly 65% have about $100,000 in rev to about $100 million in revenue. And they've either closed their seed round of, in many cases, $3 million or less. In most cases, 1.5 or less. There are some that are 1.5 to 3. And there's another 5% or so that are doing more than $1 million a year in revenue, and they're starting to go their Series A. So I'll talk to them from the perspective of those that have already closed their seed round and are doing a little bit more in revenue. The interesting thing that we're seeing there is for the longest time, again, capital for, in particular, Black founders and other diverse founders was a huge issue. So they were like, we need money so that we can grow our company. Now, because of the realities of the last 18 months is that there's never been more support for diverse startup founders, particularly Black founders, but also there's a lot more cash going out there for investment. And so now we're seeing that people have money, but they're having a little bit of difficulty hiring the right talent. So they're bringing people on, they're taking people off because it's not working out, and stuff like that. They're trying to find effective ways to manage in a remote environment, and they're trying to still figure out if there are any tools to make their internal operations more efficient. So if I can say anything, if you're out there with a company, this is what we're seeing with some of the best diverse founders really out there in the country. And so we see it all the time. For context, how we work with founders is, for the most part, those people in the middle, again, million or so in revenue or a little bit less, we meet with them every Monday morning for 30 minutes in a group huddle. So we're about to launch like 13 huddles now going on a Monday morning, where they talk about their progress from last week. They talk about any wins they may have, press, customers, investment. They talk about their plan for the week and where they need help. And I can tell you, by and large, when they say they need help with operations for the most part. Like B2B sales and operations is it. What tools do you have? I promise you, if I check Slack right now, somebody's asking for some type of tool to do payroll, to onboard people, to just work with companies or work with employees and contractors and make it more efficient, by and large. And so we spend a lot of time making recommendations for products. We have founders recommend other products to each other. And so it's a very interesting place of where we sit, as I have about 30 seconds left now, where we sit now with working with diverse founders, and really interested to see where it goes, as hopefully we'll go back somewhat to normal, and people start to go back into an office or this kind of hybrid remote working environment. So happy to answer any questions you may have about my backstory, about accounting, about what we're seeing with Goodie Nation, how we built it, and stuff like that.
give it up first. I'll ask first question, then I'll walk around and make sure others can ask too. So thanks for sharing the origin story. I love that. And I heard, yep, you were a college kid. You certainly like to have parties and things like that. You're interested in tech. Where did the social impact side come from you? Is that something that was just prevalent in you kind of growing up, or did you hit any moment to where like, wow, this needs to be part of kind of who I am going forward?
So it's interesting. And my mom, so recently, so I'm part of the family reunion committee that was supposed to be in Atlanta last year. So we pivoted to do origin stories for our family. So it's two parts. So my mother is from Montgomery, Alabama. She grew up in the same neighborhood that Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in when he was in Montgomery at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Matter of fact, her aunt and her uncle, my great aunt and uncle, were really close with MLK in the family. And actually, when the King's home was bombed, my great aunt Lucy, was in the home with Coretta Scott King and her one child at the time. And so if you go to that neighborhood in Montgomery Centennial Hill, you can feel the spirit of civil rights. Like Ralph David Abernathy, I think, grew up there or lived there. A few other people like Nat King Cole and a few other people as well. So you can literally feel the spirit of civil rights in the air. And so every time I would go to my grandmother's house, I kind of just felt it. I kind of just knew in the back of my head like it was there. And then also my mother told a story about how, just generally speaking, I think her teachers saw something in her where she would look out for people. The best way to say it, she would look out for people that maybe could not defend themselves. I think that passed down to me. And again, my father, growing up in Mobile, is basically an environmental activist for that historic neighborhood and stuff. And so going to meetings with him over the years, and he's thinking, I'm over like after like baseball practice, like playing around, not paying attention. I was probably paying attention. So the combination of stuff from my parents really just kind of seeped down to me. And then when I got my trigger moment, it really hammered home. Actually, I'm sorry. Can I tell one story?
Absolutely, yeah.
How I got to the $1 billion mark. I completely missed that in the story. Okay. So here's the thing. December 20, when Sanjay called me around the idea for Startup Week, I came up with the Hackathon for Good, December 2013, actually on my mother's birthday, December 13th or 14th, excuse me, when I came up with the 2013 is when I came up with the idea. I actually got into this program called Hive Global Leaders Program, HIVE, out in San Francisco, the first ever cohort. So the cohort took place MLK weekend 2014, so January 2014. So we're at the change.org offices. There's like 30 people. So weird thing, 30 people in high school, 30 people here, hive.org, inflection points. And so you have some amazingly talented people from across the world. My roommate was from India, 30 years old, decently high-ranking official in the government there, and his goal was to be prime minister one day. You had another person there who's on the same swim team as Michael Phelps and who had an Olympic gold medal. You had another person whose father was a really high-ranking official in the government in Nepal, and she wanted to become the first woman prime minister of Nepal. And so at that time, I'm living like by the old Turner Field here, thinking like, I want to impact like diverse nonprofits in like Atlanta in the Southeast. And so the owner of the company, of the organization, gets up in front of us and says, 30 people in a room, not too much bigger than this. How can you impact change for 1 billion people? And so I started doing this calculation in my head, Atlanta, Southeast. I'm looking at these people like they're going to do it. I'm not. I'm a very competitive person. And so how am I going to do it? By that weekend, by that Monday, MLK Day, I had a plan to go to do the hackathon from just Atlanta to across the world. And here's the interesting thing. I figured out at the end of the program, like what he meant was, how can we collectively impact 1 billion people? But I was like, at that time, it's too late. Like I got my plan and I'm to the races. So it's a combination of like my parents. He literally challenged, what I feel like he personally challenged me to come up with a plan to help 1 billion people. And I came up with that plan and here we are.
That's awesome. Other questions? Feel free to shout them out, or I'll come around with the mic. Who's got more? I've got another one while we're waiting for it. I mean, you know me, I'll keep going. Well, Katie's got one. Katie, yeah, shout it out. If you wouldn't mind, Joey, just repeat it for online so the folks can hear it. So.
How do we decide who gets to be a part of our program or not? Very good question. So very specifically, we are partnered with Village Capital, and we use a rubric that they created in order to measure a startup's progress and also, well, their progress as it relates to like milestones and so on and so forth. And then we also kind of measure how much confidence we have in their potential. And so kind of also going back to, my whole thing around unrealized potential, it's a very interesting thing. So get into I'm a numbers person. I just love this through and through, right? When you start to look at someone's potential, they came up with this rubric in this chart on a scale of like 1 to 4, where it's a combination of like evidence and like potential. So like a 1 is the lowest score, weak evidence, weak potential. Number 2 is strong evidence, weak potential. Score of a 3 is weak evidence, strong potential, and 4, strong evidence, strong potential. So what it's kind of saying is that they emphasize potential more than evidence. And so when you're talking about someone's confidence, and so when we talk to founders, we look for a few things initially. 1, how much progress they have, but also how much potential we think we have. We think they have. But 2, and this is in a series of very short interviews, we ask them what are their priorities and goals for the next 3 to 6 months. And I can tell you definitively, the ones that can just go down the list and say, boom, 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 are the ones that do well. The ones that have to figure it out. Some of them get glassy eyes. Some of them have to figure or think about it, so on and so forth. Those are the ones, unfortunately, that may have a little bit of trouble kind of executing or being successful. The third part is their self-awareness. It's actually pretty big. So if you think back to, if you've ever seen some of those old memes on like Facebook or stuff like that about people working out, like how you view yourself, how your friends view you, and then reality, like you can do that for a startup founder as well. And so what happens is we have them take a 5-minute assessment that measures how far they think they've made in terms of progress. We then give them the same assessment through the interview, and we have a third party give them assessment as well. And then we compare those results. And by and large, the founders with a small difference between how they view themselves and how other people view you tend to do really, really well. We've seen companies or founders that have rated themselves at like an IPO level, I promise you, like an IPO level, and they barely have a product. And so it's like, hey, like I know as a founder, you got to have this reality distortion field and think that you can like move mountains, but you got to have a little bit of reality here too. So those are the 3 things that we look at when we evaluate people.
I mean, others. I'm going to ask. Sorry, right here. Go ahead.
Have you had any founders or potential founders maybe didn't make it in a year but came back the next year and were better off or had a better plan?
That's an interesting question. The short answer is no. No, only because the current version of our program is about 2 years old. That's an interesting question. I mean, so we just recently had a startup decide to shut down. And we actually, when she sent me the email, said, hey, we're gonna decide to shut down. We're doing decent. They had done $1 million in revenue at one point, decided to shut down. The first thing I thought about was like, let's do a funeral for the startup. Let you like process this grief and so on and so forth. So we actually held a virtual memorial for the startup itself. The founders came out and said a few words. Some of their friends said a few words, and so on and so forth. It was interesting. And I think part of that, going back to your question, is the ability for a founder to process what just happened so they can get back out there and start playing the game again. So one of the things that we played around doing is called this Failed Founder Fellowship that serves as like a soft landing point for founders after their thing doesn't work out, and let them know that it's okay to kind of get back in the game. Because what I can tell you that many cultures, particularly those cultures of color, do not reward failure at all. It's like, don't show up to the family reunion ever again. We're gonna shun you. And so that it's tough on the psyche. And so we want to allow founders to understand it's okay. You did something that 99% of the people out there, can't and won't do, and that's okay too. And so you're actually probably better off for it. Learn what you got to learn, kind of rejuvenate, get back in the game, and stuff like that. But I'll let you know if we see some people that kind of get back in the game.
Hey, Joey, you talked a little bit about some of the folks that were in the room, and those of us in Atlanta that know Atlanta ecosystem really well and know what Gooder's done and some of those things. But a lot of these folks are from all over the country and haven't heard their story. Can you talk about a couple of the people that you're talking about, or a couple, maybe one or two that really stick out, and tell about the impact that the companies coming through have already had, and a little bit about what they do, just to give them an example, because some of those stories are phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Jasmine Crow from Gooder, does food waste recovery. So think about the excess food left over here from some of the boxes, or think about the excess food left over from restaurants and things like airports, convention centers, and so on and so forth. So almost like in an Uber-like fashion, they pick up that food that was slated to be thrown away, and they redirect it to homeless shelters, churches, food banks, so on and so forth. And so the ironic thing about Jasmine, she almost didn't get to the program because people had told her that idea was horrible. Interesting story. The day before we sat in this room, we actually had the deadline for the application to start. Weird, because like applications closing like at noon. The program started the next day. Jasmine emailed me at 11 a.m. said, "Hey, I had this idea. Do you think it would work for your program? Do you think it'd be good?" And I knew her. I immediately hit her back, said, "Hey, this is actually a good idea. Apply." And the rest is history. She's probably going on now. I think she's raised over $2 million in funding and probably saved over, 8 million pounds of food in the last few years. For context, I think it's one pound of food equals one meal, right? And so that's super dynamic company about to do some amazing things. The company is named Inclusive, but it used to be called Civic Dinners. So really cool platform that brings people together with different, in many cases, political opinions to have conversations over dinner, like on a certain topic. So they facilitate these conversations. You can book time to host a 10-person dinner. You can show up at some random person's house, at least pre-pandemic, and have a facilitated conversation about, really hot topic at the moment. In many cases, that's really particular to a local city. And so, especially in the last maybe 5 or 6 years where the country is divided amongst many different ways, there's a really great platform. So she's going on to raise over $1 million, partner with Facebook, is doing probably hundreds and thousands of dinners across the world. And then finally, Mini City, India Hayes, focused on homeless citizens. Where this product started was almost like a Fitbit for homeless citizens to help them get ID. They since evolved the product, and it's making it a lot easier for homeless citizens to get an ID. And in this country, if you don't have an ID, there's not a lot of services that you have access to. So you're trapped in this loop where you can't get out in order to make your life better. And so those are just 3 of the companies in the program that started fall or September 2016 in this room that's going on to make the world a better place for us all.
Awesome.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Other questions? Joey, I loved how you talked about the neighborhood, right? Your grandparents came in and how that influenced you. What impact has Atlanta had for you? Is Atlanta has it been important here in this city for you and for what you're doing with Goodie Nation? Has it been helpful, or is it, I'm just curious of where you think Atlanta sits right now here, whether it's in the U.S. or globally, in terms of technology and entrepreneurship. What are you seeing? I feel like you're kind of at the center of it. I'm wondering how much that's influenced the work you're doing.
Yeah, no, Atlanta, I don't think we do what we do if it wasn't for Atlanta. Atlanta, you hear it from a diverse perspective, tons of really talented people that are in decision-making capacity. The culture is awesome here across many different ways. And so this intersection of technology and the culture, so to speak, has played a pivotal role. But I can tell some very specific stories about how it's helped me in particular, because in many cases, people of color are in decision-making roles. And so 2014, after we have the first hackathon in March, we have a second one in June. We're starting to now make this thing called Goodie Hack at the time more official. And December comes, I get a call from Care USA, like the care package people headquartered downtown, said, hey, can you do this hackathon thing for our employees that are spread all over the world, leading a bunch, like 30 different countries? And the reality is I didn't have a pricing model, but I was like, yes, this is Care. This is Care USA. I just made up a price. They said, how much? I don't know, $25,000. I just made it up literally on the spot. No proposal, no accounting system or anything like that. And so we ended up training their employees, these country leaders, and putting them through a 3-day hackathon. And that's one of the first times when I thought like, oh, this billion person thing may actually happen. But it's because Care is headquartered here, and through relationships, and I'll tell that story another time, we got that opportunity. Fast forward a few months, Google calls again and says, hey, we're doing this hackathon design thinking thing, or really we're doing the design thinking lab at our headquarters in Mountain View about how to build better products for the 2016 presidential election. And because Jewel Burks at the time worked for Google, she was here, we got that opportunity. To be clear, I had never done a design thinking lab in my life, much less even ran one. But when Google calls, say, hey, can we do this? Yes, we can do this. I can lead this thing. And so we just called a few people from around town, because social impact is unique to Atlanta, or we have a really strong culture around social impact and civil rights and so on and so forth. And we put together a team, and they did some products that, or we helped them come up with ideas for products that eventually they partnered with Facebook and a few others on. The next week, I hopped on a plane after leaving Google and did the hackathon for the airport. The person over the airport, Jai Farrell, was a friend of mine, and had she really been not in that position of power, we don't end up running that innovation lab for the airport that ultimately led, ironically, Gooder ended up winning the hackathon. They ended up getting a pilot at Hartsfield-Jackson in Terminal B, I believe, and that was their major inflection point to go in national. And so if we don't have, in particular, young people of color in decision-making power at very powerful companies and organizations and stuff like that, Goodie Nation and what I'm doing now doesn't really exist. And I don't think it can happen anywhere else.
I have a couple of questions, so hopefully there's still some time. The first question I have is, you mentioned, like in your first sentence, that you hate inefficiency. So personally, I'm wondering, like, what top 3 tools do you use personally in your personal life to help with your efficiency? And then I have a more broader question around potential. I assume the algorithm you use to measure potential is proprietary, but is there anything that you know of to help measure potential? I find personally, like, I see potential, right? I can see it and I invest a lot of time in it, but it's like you said, you hate when somebody wastes their potential, and it's like, how do you prevent yourself from wasting time on, those people? Yeah, so
a few things there I got to admit. I'm not going to lie to you. One, with the whole potential thing, there's one of those you ever had an interview, someone asked what is your weakness, and then you turn around and flip it to a strength and stuff like that. I see potential in everything. I can like make a potential, I can see potential in anything, or maybe I just make it up in my head. And so therefore that means I would invest in people. Actually, my team has to hold me back, and we have guardrails in place that we don't admit like everybody into the program, because I feel like everybody can do stuff. They may not turn into the next, Kenji or something like that, but they may go on to do some really interesting things. And unfortunately, I don't have the perfect answer to some of those things. I mean, I could even send you that rubric around potential and confidence and so on and so forth, but there's nothing there. Like it's just a feeling. I can't really measure it. From a tool standpoint, personally, the other thing I have to admit is there is no delineation in my life between personal and professional, and that means that I probably shade more toward professional than anything else. What I can say from a tool standpoint with the company is Build.com probably saved my life last year. And then I'm serious. So let me tell you why. I'm gonna tell you another tool as well. Summer 2020, pandemic, everyone's going crazy. But then George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor happened, and someone running an organization with a black founder of a nonprofit that primarily, though not exclusively, helps black entrepreneurs. Like it's like the fire hose turned on, and like everybody wanted to talk. So like tons and tons and tons of people reached out, and it was actually, I'm not gonna say we were worse off, but it caused so much stress because I was taking tons and tons of meetings, having to do all these proposals and so on and so forth, and we were already stressed out. So I was legitimately concerned about my health. Like I started to think like, let me build some documentation in the company, because if something happens to me, I want this mission to go on. So literally like Build.com is like, it made my life easier. It took a lot of stress off my plate. The other thing is Airtable. We had probably, are you with Airtable? Oh. There it is. I mean, we probably had data in 300 Google spreadsheets, and not linked together, doing stuff over and over and over again. Then I got introduced to Airtable, and it took me a minute to kind of get it. But then when I got it, it started to save like 90% of the time. And I'm still getting, and I probably only know maybe 10% of it. But that 10% probably legitimately, I'm not lying to you, legitimately saved my life from all the stress and stuff like that. So, just some of the tools. Maybe we can talk about Airtable. I'd love to learn more if you know more as well. There it is.
Just curious, where did you learn about Build.com?
Was it me? I'd like, does it change any of our fee structure with you guys?
Acuity, there it is. The Acuity. No, seriously, I think it was another. We were a vendor with TAG, Technology Association of Georgia, and we were technically a sub-grantee, and they had to distribute the funds from what they sent us a Build.com, and I had never used it before, and so that's how I was familiar with it. So through them, and then I started thinking about it from our side, and I did a little bit of research, but because I had the familiarity from TAG, an organization that I really respected, it was kind of a no-brainer at that point.
So yes, that's one of our clients.
Yes, exactly. No, that means I did ask the Acuity, no offense, but are y'all legit? Will this work out? So I did, and they gave the thumbs up.
How can we help?
So two things. Yeah, great question. I appreciate you asking. I think.
So real quick, I'll just say, just to make sure folks heard it, Sean asked the question on online folks is how can we help, not just as companies? I think one, that's important to hear that too, but also as Sean mentioned, as individuals. So.
Yeah. My thing is if you could all commit to giving 2 hours a month to supporting diverse entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs as well, whether that be through advice, whether it's through introductions to people in your network and stuff like that. And if you want to connect with our founders at Goodie Nation, just go to our site, goodienation.org, sign up to be an expert, and we can start connecting you and stuff like that. Oh, one more tool. I'm sorry, I'm going to come back in a second. And so, yeah, like 2 hours. If you can do 2 hours a month for like 6 months straight, it'll turn into a habit. Then it turns into a culture and stuff like that. And then kind of somewhat selfishly at Goodie Nation, we're always looking for like sponsors and donors and stuff like that because we just philosophically do not believe in charging entrepreneurs for support, and we do not take equity. So we have to raise money in some of the more traditional ways for nonprofits. So give your time, give your time and your talent to the founders, and if your companies, can do something, we love support at Goodie Nation. Quick thing on the tool. So there's a tool called Bridge that makes introductions faster. So I think it's BRDG, maybe .app or something like that. And it really, it speeds up the introduction process, whereby for me at one point, it was taking me 2 weeks to make a double opt-in intro. It reduces that down in many cases, the work on my end, to like 2 minutes. So for context, it was again, last summer, around this time last year, it was taking 2 weeks to make one intro. Since then, probably at this point now made something like 1,200 to 1,500 intros, just because of their product. Still a startup in beta, but again, it's a lot. So Bill, Airtable, and Bridge.
Nice. All right. Other questions? I know we've got Joey a little bit over time, but
Sorry about that.
no. Trust me. Yeah. The caterers are late. That's okay. Any other questions for Joey? Are you going to be able to hang around and have any food with us at all, or you got to bounce?
If I can get a room, so I actually have this. So we're running a program. We're actually launching a program at 6 p.m. Where we take the same process that we use to help founders, and now we're doing it to help individuals that want to go into tech.
We got you.
So if I get a room by 6, I can stay out here a little bit longer and stuff like that.
That absolutely. I told you this guy's touching everything. So, other questions? Anybody else have other questions for Joey? That was, Sean, you kind of asked the same one I had too, is how do we help as individuals? And I appreciate you sharing that, Joey. I think obviously as companies, you can hear some of the great tech companies out there who Joey has been working with. And so there's a lot of y'all in the room here too. This man is full of knowledge and ways to help tap into and connect into some really incredible entrepreneurs who just haven't been situated in a big metropolitan city, who may be a person of color, a female founder. There are lots of wonderful entrepreneurs who just have not had the same advantages that many others have. And what they're doing at Goodie Nation and what Joey's been doing is absolutely the future for unlocking lots of potential, great relationships. And so I'd also ask, again, all of our wonderful Tech Stack partners, if you need someone to help you think through that, how you all may tap into some great resources, please take a look at Goodie Nation. They're doing some amazing things. Any other questions? Matthew, you look up here like you're ready for more, or you just kind of up here
I'm making sure we got the logistics down. I didn't know how much you know. Because since you've been moderating, I've been talking to Kelly. She's been keeping me updated on logistics. So,
well, hey, everyone. So, yeah,
Thank you.
Give it up for Joey. Appreciate you so much, man. Thank you, Joey. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Just being in the Atlanta ecosystem, it's been just amazing to watch what Joey's done with the founders in Atlanta, in particular, that I know in these socially motivated causes, and it's just unbelievable. I feel like it's just a privilege to work with the AcuityCares clients, and hopefully you've heard a couple of the stories of the impacts that he's made with the companies. There's a dozen more that he has that are just unbelievable with the food waste, with Jasmine in particular. I've gotten to see that firsthand and seen that from when they were doing, 10 pounds of food waste, and then they started doing thousands of pounds of food waste on their metrics to now millions of pounds of food waste. Just as one example, it's just been unbelievable and a privilege to see that. So thank you so much for what you're doing, but really a privilege to be in the AcuityCares program. Just some logistics for everybody. The caterers actually were late, but we're not planning to go upstairs till about 5:15. So we have time in this floor and the other floor, where we had lunch, and in this room. You can be here until about 5:15, and we can kind of mosey upstairs to do stuff. I think we're going to do an Oprah giveaway in just a second, I think, judging by Kelly doing that. So we're going to get ready to do that beforehand. But there's some sodas and waters, I think, down here still, unless we've already moved them upstairs. I think we have those. There's actually a tap across the street, across the hall, with beer across the street. Not across the street. Where we had lunch, there's actually a tap built in because we love our office. And then there's definitely beverages upstairs and local Atlanta food upstairs for dinner later in just a second when we get up there. And just we're going to be here for a while, so just the elevators are going to take a while because of COVID, but bear with us. But around 5:15, the first groups can start moseying up there as you like. But feel free to mill around here. So do we want to do some more drawings?
Yeah, we're going to do more drawings. First of all, Kelly, you hanging in there? How you doing? I mean, look at her. She is moving. I saw the hair. I saw the hair go up as the sign of life.
I thought the lead caterer was going to be dead by the time we got there, but we have restrained Kelly. Kelly has not killed anyone today, but
as always, our mama bear is taking care of us, right? So that's what Kelly. When I saw that hair going up, I knew it was getting hot. Okay, you're hanging in there. All right, Kelly, don't worry. More swag. All right, here we go. So, it's for another blanket. Now let's get a little cooler up there. Carla Fernandez. Kim.
She's
online. Kim, you get a new blanket. Where did I put this? I put this. Sorry, there's a process. Oh, those blankets are nice. Ooh, I want one of those. Well, maybe. Joy Beniguan. Where's Joy? Oh, boy. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Keep me going.
Hats.
Like those hats. Oh, those are nice. Nicole. Is Nicole in? Nicole. I have to. It's a little tough. I'm going to. Zingalowski? Zingalowski? I'm sorry, Nicole.
She's in Colorado. She's a Colorado girl.
Oh, she is. Colorado folks.
No, not from.
I was going to make the Colorado folks take it back. I know. Matthew, come up here and help me.
I'm dying up here. I'm dying up here. She's not here anyway, either. Lynn. Is Lynn here? Yeah.
There's a thing called the mail.
I'll send it to her.
We can ship it.
This is what happens when 2/3 of the people can't come.
I know.
It's AcuityCon.
And for this one, what is that? A pullover to Virgil. We'll send it to Virgil.
Hey, Virgil. Yeah, she gets whatever she wants. Tax deadline. Sergio and Alex and the whole tax team said Virgil gets whatever she wants.
All right, man.
Whatever the best one she wants, she's going to text in and do whatever. This is for the cooler.
This is for another of those coolers.
Trey Chavez. Here we go.
That man.
I see him. He's here.
He will use that.
He will use the cooler. So
I know he will.
Come get it. This is for the backpack.
Another backpack coming. Backpack. Did I put that one back in? Can we have a double? Somebody almost won two things. Sorry, Abby.
Okay.
So the backpack instead goes to Brianna.
All right, Brianna. We should have a thing tomorrow. Like, if you want to try. Oh,
this is Matthew.
I cannot believe it's not Kenji. Kelly Spangers.
You got a blanket.
Yeah, for real.
You did. Come on. Yeah, you want some?
We'll give that to somebody else.
No.
I'll do another one.
Okay. We have another one?
I got another blanket. I got 2 blankets.
Okay, another blanket goes to Lisa Hyde. Woo! All right, last one. Sorry.
You can't throw it back in. They can't win 2.
I grew up in Illinois, outside Chicago. That's what you do. You vote early, you vote often. You just put stuff in the ballot box.
Midwest guys.
One more blanket.
One more blanket.
On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
D-Mac.
Where's D-Mac? Oh, there he is.
Have to be present to win. He's right there.
All right.
He's right here. He's coming.
I have a hat.
Oh, there's hat. Come. Okay, we're still going.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I have a hat.
It's a hat.
Lillian Glenn.
Lillian. Woo.
There she is.
Okay, another hat.
I have a pullover.
A pullover for Tommy Hicks. Where'd Tommy go? Tommy.
Tommy was here.
Oh, Tommy. Okay. Tommy still gets it. Tommy was here. Okay, cool. Are we? All right, y'all.
Kenzie, I'm going to go talk to see what's going on. I'll call you.
So, okay, great.
We will await the phone call from Kelly for where we head back upstairs. But in the meantime, like Matthew said,
We have this whole area on the first floor.
all
this
first
room,
floor.
the
Hang
room
out.
across there. So
We'll start
hang
sending
out,
people up
enjoy each
soon.
other, and
Thanks, y'all.
we'll be heading up for all the kinds of fun in just a second. See you online.